Okay, so let's get into this. We are doing a deep dive into a relationship dossier that honestly, it reads less like a modern romance
Yeah, much less.
and more like a high-stakes psychological thriller. It's almost an instructional manual on how not to begin a life together.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a secret inheritance, a major professional ethical crisis, and the literal ghost of a relationship past, all converging at once.
It's a case study in that convergence, isn't it?
Hmm.
Two people, Annabelle Ronaldi and Mike Flynn, they arrive at this impulsive, life-altering moment.
And each one is carrying, a huge duffel bag full of their own unresolved crises, personal and professional.
And they try to build a future while they're basically digging up the past at the exact same time.
It's an impossible task from the get-go.
So our sources, they really detail this extraordinary journey. You have Annabelle, a former artist and gallery director,
Very talented, but blocked, completely blocked creatively.
and Mike Flynn. He's a dedicated pulmonologist, but he's also, deeply and ethically compromised by his job.
Right, and we're tracking their connection from, what can only be described as a scandalous one-night stand.
All the way to these massive life decisions. We're talking about confronting this deep-seated trauma, these toxic family secrets.
And a financial windfall. Let's not forget that. A windfall worth what? Somewhere around $7 million plus an entire estate.
Yeah, a massive estate. So our mission today is to really extract the psychological and, I guess, the practical takeaways from all this chaos.
We have to understand the mechanics of their survival. How did they navigate these identity crises, the incredible professional stress Mike was under, and the shadow of this deceased look-alike to find any kind of resolution?
Right, we're focusing on the interplay between their internal emotional baggage and these just extraordinary external pressures.
Especially the legacy pressure. That's the big word. It almost tore them apart before their relationship even had a chance to breathe.
The pressure cooker was set to high from the very first moment they met. So let's unpack that. Section 1. The inciting incident and how their initial dynamic, which, should have been fun and frivolous, was immediately just heavy.
Weighed down by history they didn't even know they shared.
Okay, so the start of this relationship it's undeniably cinematic.
It's a rom-com setup.
It is. Annabelle and Mike, they meet at her sister Rosalie's wedding. She catches the bouquet, he catches the garter.
You can't write it better than that. It's the perfect, corny setup for a whirlwind romance.
And the sources are very, very clear about the immediate result. Their night together was described with the phrase, mind-boggling, earth-shattering, world-rocking sex.
And that phrase is so important, not just for the heat it conveys, but for what it doesn't provide.
What do you mean?
It creates this instant, overwhelming physical bond, a deep attachment on a purely sensory level. But it completely bypasses the necessary cognitive and emotional intimacy you need for a sustainable relationship.
So it's a weak foundation.
It's an unsustainable foundation of pure passion. And Mike, the doctor, the guy who is known for control and stability, he gets it.
Right, he's the guy who literally controls breathing for a living, his own and his patient's. And he realizes immediately that they've skipped way too many steps.
Exactly. The morning after this monumental hookup, he tries to inject structure back into the chaos. The source says he attempts to perform the first date thing.
Oh, that's so awkward.
It is. He starts asking for middle names, occupations, just a quick run-through of the basics.
She's trying to make the encounter not seem so premature.
It's a tragic comic attempt, really. He's applying this professional, logical process to something that is profoundly messy and impulsive. He's basically trying to triage their emotional state right after this huge connection.
Which in itself can be a kind of trauma, right? That kind of sudden intensity for two people who have spent years controlling their emotions.
And here's where the context really starts to matter. Mike wasn't a total stranger. He was already integrated into her life, by proxy.
Right. He's the best friend of her new brother-in-law, Nick.
And he knows the family dog, Dave. He's known him since Nick and Rosalie got together. So this means Mike is immediately enmeshed in the Ronaldi social circle.
The stakes are instantly raised. This can't be just a casual hookup, because if it fails.
The social collateral damage is huge for everyone.
But the truly toxic element, the thing that immediately set off alarm bells in Annabelle's subconscious, was the resemblance. This is the core trauma trigger.
Yes. Annabelle's first real reaction to seeing Mike in the daylight is not excitement. It's sheer terror-fueled panic.
She mumbles, "Chip."
Thinks she saw a ghost, and she pushes away from him, completely overcome by this feeling of repetition, this feeling that the past is literally in her bed.
It shows that Chip isn't just a memory for her. He's an active, living presence in her mind.
And she tries to rationalize it later to her friend Becca, saying Mike looks exactly like Chip. But then she starts detailing these tiny, crucial differences.
Mike has fuller lips, a nose that's been broken more than once.
Which suggests, a less pristine, maybe a more rugged life than Chip's.
And Becca, hilariously, adds bigger feet.
Yes. But the physical resemblance is this massive stumbling block. It forces Annabelle to confront the fact that she has, on some level, chosen a physical duplicate of the man she loved and lost.
But the real distinction, the one she initially misses, is in the eyes.
This is where it gets really interesting, because the eyes are the gateway to the personality difference. They're the clue she should have seen.
Chip had one brown eye and one eye that was half brown and half green. And it's described as having a constant sense of wonder.
He saw the world with this openness, maybe a touch of naivete.
Mike's eyes, by contrast, are gray and assessing.
And that shift from wonder to assessment perfectly encapsulates the difference between them. Chip was, volatile, maybe emotionally demanding, but open. Mike is stable, controlled, and calculating. He's the physician trained to diagnose and evaluate.
So deep down, Annabelle needed a second one. She needed the assessing doctor.
But the physical trigger, the resemblance, made her fear she had found the first one all over again, the emotional volatility.
That's a profound observation. Mike offered the stability she unconsciously needed to heal, but his face made her immediately fearful that she was just repeating this cycle of heartbreak.
It's a powerful illustration of how physical triggers can just hijack your logical decision-making when you have unresolved trauma.
And this relationship, it didn't just have internal triggers, it was immediately surrounded by this highly vigilant, protective social network. The Ronaldis.
Oh, the Ronaldis. They are magnificent and terrifying in equal measure.
So Mike and Annabelle, they finally managed to get to their first official date. And Annabelle's brother, Rich, the protective older sibling, just shows up, uninvited.
He still has a spare set of keys from when Rosalie lived there, just lets himself in.
And Rich, who's very successful, clearly the anointed one of the Ronaldi clan, he immediately launches what can only be called
an aggressive, high-stakes interrogation.
That's it. We know the specifics of this interview. He asks about Mike's occupation, his schools, Columbia Presbyterian,
marital status, children, even his father's background.
And then the ultimate loyalty test for a New Yorker. Favorite sports teams. Mets, Rangers, Giants, and Knicks. He had to get them all right.
And asking about his father's background, what a cruel twist of fate, given that Mike has never even met his father. Rich couldn't have known, but it just underscores the intense, almost forensic level of screening Mike underwent just to date Annabelle.
Rich's motive is pure protection, though. It stems from the family's prior mistakes with her.
But the execution is suffocating.
And Mike's reaction is key here. He isn't offended. He respects Rich for being protective of his sister.
Why? Because Mike himself is intensely protective of his own mother, Colleen. This commonality, this deep need to protect the women they love, it's one of the first genuine, non-sexual connections they share, even as Rich is drilling him.
Mike sees Rich's intensity and recognizes a shared instinct. It bypasses the hostility. But Rich wasn't the only one. Annabelle also had her fairy godfathers.
Her neighbors, Wayne and Henry.
Wayne is the emotional powerhouse. He goes into full mother hen mode and provides the comedic, slightly abrasive teasing.
Right. He immediately sizes Mike up, calls him Dr. Big, blonde, and beautiful.
Which we later learned is a running joke about the accuracy of the big part once he sees that infamous painting.
And Henry, his partner, is the counterbalance. He's the calm, observant, Rock of Gibraltar type.
They become crucial later. They're mediators and caregivers when she gets injured and has her emotional meltdowns. They're the healthy, chosen family she built outside of that toxic Ronaldi sphere.
The takeaway from this whole opening section is just crucial for you to understand. This relationship was never allowed to develop organically.
Right.
It started in this vortex of chaos, immediately burdened by Annabelle's past trauma. Chip's ghost Mike's need for rigid structure, and this intense family scrutiny from Rich. The weight of the past was just crushing them from the very start.
And speaking of that crushing weight, let's pivot and take a deep dive into Annabelle's avoidance mechanisms and the trauma she had been actively physically running from for 2 years. Okay, so diving deeper into Annabelle's internal world, we have to talk more about Chip, the deceased look-alike. The sources paint this picture of a love that was really tethered to obligation.
That's a great way to put it. She loved him as much as he knew how, which is a very limiting but fiercely loyal assessment. It suggests she gave more than she got.
And it wasn't enough to build a permanent life on.
Her devotion to him, though, especially when his cancer returned, it really highlights her instinct towards self-sacrifice. She stayed with him, acknowledging she couldn't dump his ass.
But the key point of self-definition, the moment she drew a line, was her refusal to marry him.
And you have to ask, why refuse marriage to a man you're devoted to, especially when he's dying?
The answer is her toxic family dynamic.
Entirely. She refused because she didn't want to prove her parents right. The Ronaldis constantly suggested she was only after Chip's money, that she was leveraging his wealth and connections.
So by refusing the ring, she was making this desperate attempt to maintain her personal integrity.
To prove her love was genuine, even if it meant denying him a final wish. It shows how powerful external validation, or rather, the avoidance of her family's judgment was in her decision-making.
It's just tragic. She chose integrity over comfort, and the result was 2 years of unprocessed grief and this emotional numbness after he died.
And the physical evidence of this whole conflict, her love, her grief, her integrity, it traveled with her in a crate from Philadelphia to New York.
The infamous nude painting.
The infamous nude painting. Wayne discovers it, this massive 36 by 60 oil painting of a very naked Chip. And this isn't just a sketch, it's a monumental life-size declaration of a past love.
And it confirms the physical resemblance to Mike in the most unambiguous way possible.
And Wayne, bless his heart, he immediately turns the discovery into observational comedy. He critiques the subject, saying, if this painting is accurate, we have to rethink the big part of the good doctor's moniker.
So the painting isn't just a symbol, it's a time bomb hidden in plain sight. It proves Annabelle consciously knew the extent of their resemblance, but chose not to say anything.
It serves two profound functions here. First, it symbolizes her buried past, a large, powerful, physical representation of the man whose ghost she's running from.
And second?
It explains her artistic block. We're told she used to paint, but stopped 2 years ago, right after Chip's death. That creative, expressive part of her was shelved, just like that huge canvas.
And her boss, Ben Walsh, who we will definitely meet again later in a very dramatic context, he recognizes this emotional paralysis.
He does. He forces her to work in a studio setting, surrounded by blank canvases, hoping that forced creativity will bring the part of her that died back to life.
And her own confession really drives this point home. She feels guilty of loving Chip and not Mike.
This self-blame is the engine of her avoidance. The emotional numbness she adopted after Chip's loss allowed her toxic family to just reassert control over her life.
We have to understand the Ronaldi matrix to really get Annabelle's low self-worth at this point.
You really do. Her mother, Maria Ronaldi, is portrayed as being pathologically obsessed with marrying off her daughters. Annabelle feels like a perpetual disappointment because she hasn't secured a suitable, wealthy husband.
Annabelle says it herself that she allowed her mother to run her life and railroad her into an engagement with that scum of the earth ex-fiancé Johnny De Palma.
And this is the tragic benchmark of her self-esteem during her period of numbness.
And the anecdote about Johnny is crucial because it defines the caliber of relationship her family approved of for her.
Yeah.
Johnny was caught.
Doing the nasty right next to a corpse, Mrs. Nunzio. Right. If her mother approved of a man engaged in flagrante delicto next to a cadaver, it just demonstrates how utterly compromised Annabelle's judgment and self-worth were.
It was all due to parental pressure. She was so detached, so numb from the pain of Chip's loss, that she couldn't differentiate between manipulation and a real relationship.
She spent 2 years just burying the pain and walking through life numb and so detached.
The whole trajectory of her recovery changes when something external forces her to stop running. Literally.
She falls off a ladder at work, sprains her ankle, tears tendons. It's an injury that forces her, the woman who doesn't do still, who runs to deal with her energy, into complete physical immobilization.
And this physical stop, it also strips away her emotional filter, especially because she's on painkillers.
The forced rest, combined with the meds, it leads to babbling and confessions. She almost spills the entire truth about Chip right then and there.
And Mike, the stable, controlled doctor, he just steps right into the brooch. He morphs into this unexpected caregiver.
It's a radical shift in their dynamic. It goes from intense physical passion to this profound non-sexual intimacy.
He insists on proper treatment, urgent care, a boot, crutches, and then he basically moves into her apartment as a stabilizing force.
He cooks Italian food, one of the only 3 meals he knows how to make. He cleans her apartment until it's sparkling, vacuums up all the dog hair. He brings domestic order to her emotional and physical wreckage.
Annabelle finds this completely overwhelming, but also undeniably attractive. Mike, the man of rigid control, is forced into a nurturing role he hadn't planned on.
And that stability begins chipping away at her defenses. The depth of his care is what forces her to confront all that emotional baggage.
Right, because Mike correctly diagnoses her subsequent mini-meltdown, the crying, the despair over being inactive.
He knows it's not just about the ankle pain. He says it's related to Chip, to her underlying trauma. The injury is a catalyst. It forces a vulnerability that establishes genuine trust.
And that's a bedrock they desperately need before the major shocks of Section 4 hit them.
It's so compelling how their separate crises intertwine. Her physical breakdown facilitates her emotional breakthrough.
But Mike, while he's nurturing Annabelle, is simultaneously battling this catastrophic ethical and professional breakdown of his own.
Yeah, let's shift our attention to Mike Flynn, the heavyweight of his professional life and his very hidden identity.
So Mike is introduced to us as this highly dedicated pulmonologist, but he's locked into a system that is, well, morally compromising him.
To put it mildly, his work life is described as insane. He's living the life of a perpetual resident, and the financial structure of his practice is almost punitive.
He invested a six-figure sum into the practice. That's a massive personal sacrifice.
A huge sacrifice. And he's working for 5 years at slave wages just for the chance to make partner. He's already 2 years into this Faustian bargain, so his investment, his time, his future. It's all deeply tied to this one practice near his Coney Island apartment.
But the real stress isn't just the long hours or the money. It's the ethical corrosion happening around this other doctor, Dr. Meyer.
Right. Mike sees Meyer as an old man, a bumbling fool, and most dangerously, a malpractice suit waiting to happen. This is a fundamental conflict of conscience for him.
And he's a good doctor, so he voiced concerns about Dr. Meyer's substandard patient care.
But the partners were less than encouraging. They prioritized profit and stability over ethical practice.
So Mike realizes two devastating things. One, he probably won't be made partner because he's making waves and challenging the status quo.
And two, if he reports Dr. Meyer to the New York State Board for Professional Conduct, he risks not only losing his investment, but being permanently blackballed by the medical community.
That's a critical detail. For you listening, the risk of being blackballed isn't just losing a job. It's losing the ability to practice medicine in a major city, effectively destroying your career overnight.
He feels like a peon who's causing problems, rather than an ethical professional being protected.
This creates an absolute imperative for Mike to find an exit before he reports Meyer. He needs leverage.
That's why he secures the interview with Eastern Heart Specialists, EHS, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. This job promises a normal doctor's life, more reasonable hours.
And most importantly, it gives him the financial security and professional distance he needs to report Dr. Meyer without committing career suicide.
So Mike's decision to look into moving to Philadelphia isn't about ambition. It's about survival and professional integrity. He's choosing ethics over his current financial commitment, but he needs that new job as an insurance policy.
And this is the state of controlled crisis Mike is in when he meets Annabelle.
And this need for control, it's so deeply rooted in his personal history. Mike carries his own hidden identity trauma, stemming from his relationship with his mother, Colleen Flynn,
A protected court reporter.
and his unknown father.
So tell us about the origins of Mike Flynn.
His father is a cardiologist whom Mike has never met. The story is just a classic, sad case of abandonment.
His father dated Colleen during residency, went home for Easter, and just returned engaged to someone else.
An announcement Colleen had to read about in the society pages. Heartbreaking. So she, heartbroken but pragmatic, went back to Ireland to stay with her aunt and had Mike there. They returned to the States when he was 2.
And Mike has operated his entire life under the assumption that his father doesn't even know I exist.
He projects this sense of fierce independence and emotional distance, believing he's fine with it. It explains his rigid control. If you can control your external life, you can mitigate the risk of internal abandonment.
So his professional rigidity is a direct coping mechanism.
And his mother, Colleen, she sees it. She provides the perfect counterpoint to his highly controlled life plan. Her advice is so profound. You can't plan when to have a life. You need to have a life and plan when to work.
She sees that his dedication to work is just avoidance.
And she notes that none of the women he had dated before Annabelle ever touched your heart.
That's the moment of self-reflection Mike hits right after meeting Annabelle. He suddenly realizes he wants a whole lot more than just work. His mother's observation that Annabelle did touch his heart, it shatters his typical control.
And the behavioral evidence is immediate and, for someone so controlled, shocking. He keeps a spare set of keys to Annabelle's apartment almost instantly.
That is a huge leap.
It's a radical departure from the controlled, stable relationships he'd maintained. His stable self just disappeared after meeting her. And he views that change with a mixture of excitement and, I think, terror.
So Mike is seeking a solution to his professional and ethical crisis in Pennsylvania.
But Annabelle has created this immediate emotional need for a life in Brooklyn.
The convergence of these two highly stressed, crisis-driven individuals, Annabelle running from the past, Mike escaping the present, is why the revelation in the next section becomes just truly catastrophic. Okay, this is the section where the tectonic plates shift. Mike's hidden identity and Annabelle's repressed trauma, they collide with the force of an actual earthquake.
And it's initiated by Annabelle's best friend, Becca.
Becca, who is visiting, is the unfortunate catalyst. She sees a photo of Mike and is immediately struck by the resemblance to her deceased brother, Chip.
So she shows the photo to her father, Christopher Larson, and Larson confirms the unimaginable.
Christopher Larson is Mike's father, which means Annabelle wasn't just dating a lookalike.
She was dating Chip's half-brother. And Becca, her best friend and confidant, is Mike's half-sister. The web of connection and the level of withholding from Annabelle is just exponentially magnified.
The irony is just immense here. Annabelle's entire psychological landscape was defined by Chip and her attempt to avoid his wealth and his family's influence.
And now she's intimately involved with Chip's closest living relative, inheriting the very wealth and family drama she tried so desperately to escape.
In this explosive initial meeting with Mike, Larson delivers a second shock. Mike is a beneficiary of the Larson estate, held in a grandfather's trust.
So Mike isn't just gaining a father and a half-sister, he's gaining an enormous legacy.
Let's ground this financially for a second.
Yeah.
Mike's inheritance is estimated to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million.
In the trust. And that excludes the tangible value of the estate itself. 387 acres, a massive 4-story mansion, 7 cottages, 3 stables, a pool.
In Mike, as the first son, is meant to inherit the house. It's a symbol of his instant placement at the very apex of the Larson dynasty.
So Mike goes from working slave wages and living in Coney Island to being a $7 million beneficiary and heir to a vast estate, all in one afternoon.
He is instantly given the ultimate professional leverage he needed to report Dr. Meyer and leave that toxic practice.
But Mike is processing all this against a background of pure emotional turmoil. He's reeling from the half-brother revelation, the existence of a father he never knew.
And the fact that Annabelle knew Becca, knew Chip's family, and knew the resemblance was genuine.
And what is Mike doing in the midst of all this life-altering news?
He's planning a romantic proposal to Annabelle.
He goes to her apartment to set the scene, and that's when he finds the absolute worst thing possible.
The life-size nude oil painting of Chip.
This discovery is the fulcrum upon which the entire relationship breaks. The painting confirms the full extent of the physical resemblance and, crucially, Annabelle's deliberate withholding of critical information.
And in his shock and anger, Mike immediately misinterprets the painting. He focuses on this cruel, judgmental detail, labeling the subject as a naked guy with a little dick.
That harsh judgment shows how betrayed he felt. He interprets Annabelle's secrecy not as fear or loyalty, but as intentional deception. He is overwhelmed by intense shock, cold distance, and pure anger.
He feels played, like a fucking fool.
Mike's controlled world just shatters. He resorts to self-destructive behavior, the very thing he always avoids. He ends up drunk at Vinny and Mona's restaurant, the Nicholas.
Passing out and being put to bed in their daughter's pink room, full of stuffed animals. This physical and emotional displacement is the clearest signal of his total loss of control.
Meanwhile, Annabelle's rationale for the secrecy, it all comes back to her deep-seated trauma.
She was sold the information about Chip's connection to Larson and to Mike because she didn't want to ruin the weekend he'd worked so hard for.
She was projecting her own toxic history onto Mike. She assumed he would see the family and the money as more valuable than her, just as she felt judged by her own parents.
She feared repeating her history of, in her mind, destroying men's lives. Or worse, being judged as a gold digger chasing the inheritance she missed out on with Chip.
And Becca tries to mediate this catastrophic misunderstanding. She confirms Annabelle loves Mike, not Chip, but she admits Annabelle withheld crucial information.
And to Mike, who values honesty and control above all else, that withholding is the same as a lie.
Becca emphasizes Annabelle's core motivation, She felt Mike deserved the family and the estate, and her past relationship with Chip was a complication that would only ruin it for him.
This is the essential conflict. Secrecy rooted in fear from Annabelle versus the transparency required for trust from Mike.
While Mike is drinking himself into oblivion, Annabelle, believing the relationship is irrevocably over, suffers her own major breakdown, crying, feeling Mike's pain, believing she has failed again.
And this vacuum of emotional stability is immediately filled by a logical, transactional proposal.
Her boss, Ben Walsh, steps in.
Ben's proposal is a perfect retreat for the numb Annabelle we met earlier. Ben needs to marry temporarily within 11 months to gain control of a ranch left to him by his grandfather's will.
It's purely transactional, and he chooses Annabelle precisely because he trusts her not to fall in love with him and confuse the situation or go after his money.
It's the ultimate safe harbor of non-commitment. It validates her belief that she's only valuable in a non-emotional context. An arrangement based on control, completely devoid of the terrifying passion and vulnerability she shared with Mike.
The stage is set, and Mike, when he hears about this arrangement, reacts with visceral jealousy and anger.
The intervention of Mike's best friend, Nick, it proves pivotal in shifting Mike's perspective.
Nick steps in, and he explains Annabelle's true motivation. He tells Mike that her deception was rooted in loyalty to Chip and this deep-seated fear of the Larsons' toxic influence, not manipulation.
Nick basically clarifies the emotional calculus for him. Annabelle bowed out because she didn't want to come between Mike and his new family and legacy. She was protecting him.
Protecting him from the Ronaldi Larson judgment she knew so intimately.
Mike realizes he jumped to conclusions, but the news that Ben proposed, that just pushes him over the edge of rational thought.
The sources detail Mike's visceral, violent reaction. He breaks a coffee cup in anger, and later, when he confronts Ben at the gallery, he just punches him in the face.
That physical outburst symbolizes Mike's final break from his controlled persona. He is no longer the assessing doctor.
He's a man driven by raw emotion and a sudden, fierce realization of what he stands to lose. And Ben's response is so telling, he immediately admits, "I guess I deserve the punch."
He acknowledges the validity of Mike's passion, if not his methods.
The resulting confrontation is this chaotic, dramatic apology. Mike physically removes Annabelle from the gallery. He literally kidnaps her, throwing her over his shoulder.
While her assistant, Kaye, just waves them off, mistaking the frantic, possessive act for some kind of romantic grandstanding.
Mike apologizes for his immediate conclusions and asserts his unwavering commitment. He says, "I'm not going to give up on us ever."
He transforms the confrontation into a proposal, sliding his grandmother's ring onto her finger. It's a symbol of stable, inherited love, not the chaotic, inherited money of the Larsons.
But Annabelle is still paralyzed by fear. This is critical. She says she cannot do this again, stand between Mike and his family or his legacy.
She's terrified of losing myself again. She talks about the pain of being thrown away before, reflecting that trauma of Chip's death and the numbness that followed.
This requires Mike to make the ultimate choice, a definitive repudiation of the legacy he just discovered. He has to prove he's entirely different from the men in the Ronaldi Larson orbit.
So he commits to her by definitively rejecting the Eastern Heart Specialist job in Philadelphia.
And by extension, all the expectations that came packaged with the Larson inheritance.
His declaration is absolute. I don't need money to make me happy. I just need you.
He chooses love and professional integrity over instant, vast wealth.
And he reinforces this choice publicly, which is a crucial gesture to solidify her trust. He organizes a surprise family reunion party.
He ensures everyone who matters is there. Annabelle's parents, Aunt Rose, Mike's mother Colleen, Nick and Rosalie, Vinny and Mona, Becca, and even Christopher Larson. They're all there to hear his announcement.
In front of everyone, Mike makes his public declaration. He is staying in Brooklyn because Annabelle and I have our lives here. We have our families here.
It acts as a protective shield for Annabelle, validating her over the expectations of the Larson estate. And you see the immediate shift in the collateral damage. Mike's mother, Colleen, is actively trying to reconcile with Christopher Larson.
That old abandonment wound is starting to heal.
And this is where the financial specifics, which Mike just dismissed, come back to bite him in a good way. Becca clarifies the legal standing of the money.
Right. She reminds Mike, and you, the listener, that the estate is complex. Mike owns the estate via the grandfather's trust. Larson only has a life interest.
This is a massive distinction. It means Mike can access the interest generated from the trust's $7 million value immediately. He is legally empowered to start his own practice now using that capital.
So he didn't just reject wealth. He rejected the legacy and control that came with the wealth. The money itself, the means to his professional freedom, remains legally his.
And Annabelle realizes this difference has given her strength. She's no longer the scared little girl who cowered before Larson or her mother. Mike's sacrifice, his choice of her over the mansion, has allowed her to confront her trauma head on.
She's painting again. She's even sketching Mike.
And just as they achieve this emotional and ethical stability, the final massive twist arrives. It overturns everything.
Annabelle, still recovering, is drinking at the celebration when Aunt Rose, the family oracle, known for saying things that then happen, leans in and whispers the 6 most consequential words.
Alcohol, it's a no good for the baby.
And Annabelle connects the dots instantly. The nausea, the paleness, the vomiting at the restaurant.
She's pregnant.
The unexpected timing solidifies Mike's choice to prioritize family and his love for her above all else. But it also fundamentally changes the financial implications of the $7 million he just rejected in principle.
So this complex case, it really demonstrates that integrity and communication are the true foundations of any relationship. It doesn't matter how transcendent the initial connection might be.
The entire conflict stemmed from Annabelle's refusal to be vulnerable, to communicate the painful truth about Chip out of fear of judgment and loss.
But the resolution highlights Mike's remarkable integrity. He chose love and ethical professional practice, the ability to finally report Dr. Meyer and leave that toxic environment over instant wealth and a powerful legacy.
The inherited fortune became secondary to his personal happiness and fulfillment in Brooklyn.
And Annabelle's transformation is the most significant psychological takeaway here. She moved from the state of emotional paralysis, allowing her mother to dictate her life and abandoning her art,
to confronting her trauma head-on. The fact that she is painting again, actively sketching Mike, is such a powerful symbol of her rediscovered creative passion.
And her ability to move forward, seeing Mike not as a ghost, but as a new life, a new beginning.
It's a complete identity reboot for both of them. Mike went from being a tightly controlled physician, dedicated to his career track, to a man who literally threw away the keys to a mansion for the chance to be a husband and a father on his own terms.
He found a life he wanted because he was willing to reject the life he was told he should have.
And this brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. Mike proudly stated he didn't need the money or the estate to be happy. He made a profound, principle-based sacrifice.
But now, with the pregnant fiancé, a clear and present need to leave his current unethical practice, and the reality that he is the legal owner and beneficiary of a massive trust fund generating substantial interest, how does he ethically and practically manage the $7 million inheritance he rejected in front of his family?
He now holds the ultimate power to use that money to fund his ethical professional practice and potentially reshape the entire toxic Larson legacy for the sake of the new family he just chose.